We are all set, yeah.
Okay, good. All right, well, hello, everyone. Myself, tonight to talk about the Town of Rochester reassessment project that we're working on. I have Dave Barnett from GAR Associates and Jack from the Office of Real Property and Tax Service here in New York State. And we're gonna just kind of give some information, what we're doing with the reval, and we'll open up some questions and answers after.
And
we're doing a recording of the seminar tonight there, so we will be posted on the Town of Rochester website for anybody's future pleasure to view it. Great. So you wanna start off, sir?
Yep.
Okay. Go.
Yeah, sure. My name is Dave Barnett. I'm with GAR Associates. I'm the CEO of GAR Associates. We are an appraisal firm that does reassessment projects. We've been in business for over 65 years. So projects like this, reassessment projects like this, we've pretty much done statewide for the last 55 years or so. And essentially, while the project itself is a little different each place we go, there's a lot of similarities in the way that we approach any project. There's certain statutory dates that we have to abide by, legal dates. Regardless of whatever we do or where we do it, we abide by real property tax law. The other state agency, which we have a representative from, is the Office of Real Property Tax Services, which is a arm of the Department of Taxation and Finance. But ultimately, what I'm going to do is kind of take you through a quick overview of the phases of the project, what you can expect over the next couple weeks. We have a certain deadline in terms of when we'll be mailing correspondence to you out as a property owner. I do also want to talk about some myths, some misconceptions about a reassessment project. I know there's a bunch of anxious people, and I'm sure I know this to be true. There's probably 1,000 other things that you'd rather do than listen to me. Not against anything against these gentlemen, but I want to just make this as productive and as informative as we can. As I said, I have about, I would say, 15 minutes or so. Just let me get through. I know Jeremy will speak and Jack will speak, and then we'll do a question and answer after. And then if you have something that's more specific to your property or an individual question, I'm happy to stick around, until they kick us out of here. But ultimately, I could talk to you, more on an individual basis. I should mention we've had a dedicated toll-free hotline that has been open throughout the entire duration of the project, that you can call at really any time. That's a toll-free number. It's 866-910-1776. I see a bunch of people feverishly writing it down. Any correspondence that's mailed out to you will have this number on there. Also how to, contact us via email. We will, with the element of transparency, which I think is vital to any project, the ability to, have a workshop like this, but to gain information in regards to sales that were utilized, other people's assessments. We try to be as transparent as possible so that you have the ability, whether you're an internet user or non-internet user, that non-internet user, that same information is available in paper form. But ultimately, we're trying to engage you as a property owner, because we recognize that while a reassessment has to deal with your value, ultimately it's going to come down to tax liability. And, what I'll say, and I'll repeat it, and you'll forgive the redundancy, our job is not to determine taxes. That's another day, another location with another group of people. Our role in this process, in any project, but the assessor's role is to develop a fair and equitable value. So ultimately, you as a property owner, you want to make sure that your value, which is the vehicle as to what you pay in taxes, is fair. And when I say it's fair, is that other comparable properties and other properties that are similar to yours have a similar market value. Okay? But in terms of what you pay in taxes, that's not a function of Garth Associates. That's not our roles or responsibility. That's not a function or a responsibility of the assessor. Any project that we do is ultimately broken down into 3 phases. So we have a data verification phase. What does that mean? What we did was through aerial imagery and mailing out what we call a populated survey, a property inventory survey to property owners. The intention of the data verification phase is to get accurate inventory on everybody's property. Now, what does that mean? That's square footage of your home, any improvements, and that's not necessarily an improvement that you created or that you've owned on your property. Improvements can be porches, decks, outbuildings, garages, things of that nature. So before we look at a sale, before we look at a value, we want to get your inventory correct. At the conclusion of the data verification phase, we mailed out that populated survey. What we asked you as property owners is to review the information. Again, before we looked at value, before we looked at a sale, if there was any discrepancies, make that change and mail it back to us. Okay, and just from a timeline perspective, I mentioned a couple key statutory dates. Every year, regardless if you have a project or not, the tentative roll is filed May 1st. That's a legal date. So it's May 1st, and then the 4th Tuesday in May, give or take, the 4th Tuesday in May is grievance day. And then the final roll is filed every year, July 1st. So if we work backwards now, and I just want to give you a sense of the timeline, is the final roll will be filed this year, July 1st. That roll that's filed is the basis for the tax bill that you will first get in September of 2000, right? Your school bill will come in September of 2027 or 26, excuse me. And then subsequently, your town and county will come in January of 27 next year. So now what will end up happening is we've gone through the valuation phase. We're in the final stretch of the valuation phase. I mentioned the data verification phase. The valuation phase is looking at the town and breaking it up into neighborhoods. So it's something called neighborhood delineation. Ultimately, sounds like a very complicated term, but we want to make sure that when we're looking at sales and non-sales, your property, if it hasn't sold, that we're comparing apples to apples, okay? And that we're comparing comparable properties. So from a location standpoint, we break the town down into neighborhoods. We also do what's called sales verification. And sales verification is something that's called establishing arm's length transactions, okay? That's not Cousin Louie selling to Uncle Johnny for a fraction of the price. That's not a distress sale. That's two able, willing buyers and sellers. Generally speaking, it's about a 2-year sales window. It's kind of, and we may go a little bit further back. We are also cognizant of, COVID and some of the impact that has had on the market, and quite frankly, in a positive light, an appreciation light. But ultimately, we're looking at the neighborhoods, the sales verification, and then we establish a value. There's a series of quality control measures. The assessor, it's collaborative in the sense that the assessor is involved in the project. He knows the properties. He has intimate knowledge. We work, together in that regard, but ultimately we will establish a preliminary value. It's important to underscore preliminary because you will get a notice in and around March 1st. Or in this case, March 2nd is a Monday. You can expect the notices to go out in the mail that week. Now, what are you going to get in the mail? You are going to get what's called a tax disclosure, an impact disclosure notice. On this notice, you have your old assessment, a new preliminary value, and a hypothetical tax illustration. Now, we are required by law to include this hypothetical tax illustration. The problem with the hypothetical tax illustration is budgets and levies have not been established. The assessment roll is the total taxable value is a moving target because we're going to do informal reviews. The same way that you have every year, you have grievance day where reductions are going to be granted where warranted. So that's really going to, the total pie is going to move and your assessment may move and the levies haven't been established. When the one thing, as I mentioned at the beginning, that we can control and is our responsibility is the preliminary value that is established. So what will end up happening is you're going to get this notice. You're going to review the value. There will be an insert letter that's mailed with the notice with a step-by-step direction. Okay. Where do I go? First of all, I mentioned that toll-free number that'll be on there. For the internet users, the information will be available online for you to research. If you're not an internet user, you have the ability to call us and get information. That same information that's available electronically will be available in paper form should you request it. But you'll have the ability to look at assessments, your assessment, other comparable assessments, sales, usable arm's length transactions that were utilized as the basis for your value. You'll be able to look at those values. And if you think that you're excessive, and I'm not talking about taxes, everybody's eyes immediately will gravitate to the plus or minus on the bottom of that disclosure notice. But what we want to focus on and what we want you to focus on is the value. Okay, what have we established as your 100% full market value? If you want to challenge it, you have an informal review process that you can follow to challenge it. You will, if you do come, a couple scenarios. If you come or engage in the informal review process, then there's a reduction through the informal review process. There's no further action required. Okay. As I mentioned, the statutory date, May 1st, is your tentative roll. That's filed every year. So if you go through the informals, you'll get a notice in early March. You challenge it through the informal review process. You get a reduction that you feel is reflective of what your real market value is. It's reduced to where you think it's appropriate. There's no further action. That's your assessment. There's no further action required. In the event that you go through an informal, there's no change or it's not reduced enough. You have the ability, as you do every year, to go to grievance day. Now, grievance day is the fourth Tuesday. So the tentative roll is filed May 1st. The fourth Tuesday in May is grievance day. And that's with the Board of Assessment Review. The Board of Assessment Review, I refer to them as an independent panel. That's a potential second step. So you have the informals, that's the first step. You have the potential second step through the Board of Assessment Review. That's not a representative from GAR. That's not even a representative, or they're not involved with your assessment office. The one thing that you do have in common with that board is that they're town residents. Okay, they're appointed. It's an independent panel, another set of eyes on your value. So you get to challenge, if you choose, a second time through the Board of Assessment Review. If you do not get what you feel is a proper reduction, a proper value, depending on the type of property that you have, that third step is either a small claims assessment or an Article 7, both, formal legal proceedings. And the reason that I'm kind of taking you through this is because when you get your notice, I'm imploring you not to panic. Okay? You may use colorful language. That I understand. It's been a number of years since a reassessment project has been conducted. There are going to be large increases. There are a large amount of inequities within the assessment roll. So ultimately, you go to the Board of Assessment Review, maybe you get your notice and you feel, okay, this is in line with what the value is, no further action. If you do want to challenge your assessment, you do have the informal review. You do have the ability to go to the grievance day or additional litigation. Regardless, so there's 3 potential steps. Regardless, the roll is filed July 1st. Okay, that's the final roll. That is what will be the basis for your school district. The first time that you'll see the impact of the reassessment and your new number will be in your school tax bill in September of this year. And then subsequently, as I mentioned, in January of 27, because that's when you'll get your town and county. A couple of myths and misconceptions. This isn't a way for the town to increase revenue. Okay. There's always people that snicker at that. Ultimately, the best way to describe this or an analogy is it's a pizza. Okay. And everybody has a slice of this pie, this total pie. And some slices are accurate and they're not going to see a change. Some, are small and they're going to increase, and you're going to see an increase in your tax liability because your value is underassessed. And then there's going to be some people that see a reduction because they're overassessed. Okay, so ultimately what we're trying to do is make it parcel specific. So whatever your house is, whatever your property is, that's what we're determining the value for your property. Do not want to steal the Office of Real Property Tax Services thunder, but ultimately there's nothing on the books in real property tax law to mandate any municipality to carry their values at 100%. What is on the books is a uniform percent of value. So ultimately, one of the things that the Office of Real Property Tax Services does, they do a lot of different functions, but one of the things that they do is establish what's called an equalization rate. I'll let Jack kind of speak to that, but ultimately what it's doing and the way that this rate is developed is taking a sampling of sales and comparing the sampling of sales to the assessment and developing a rate by the entire, for the entire municipality. So ultimately you have a rate that's established for everyone. Now, the problem with that rate is it's based on a random sample of sales. That could be a new construction home, that could be a vacant piece, that could be a commercial property. They take all of these sales and they develop what's called an equalization rate. The problem is not every property appreciates or depreciates at the same level. So as I go back to it, we're looking at what you have. That, I don't know if you have this, but 1,200 square foot ranch that's on 3 acres. We're looking at that and we're finding comparable sales. Now, I will say not every property is identical. If they were, we certainly wouldn't be here. You folks wouldn't be here. It would be a math equation. We are limited because we can't force our way into anybody's home. So there are extenuating factors that you can now bring to our attention through the informal review process, certainly at grievance day, where you have things that you feel would be a detriment to if you go sell the property. And I'm not talking about cracked paint in your bathroom. We're talking about things that have a material effect on value, whether it's foundation, it needs significant updates, capital improvements. It's below average, type of condition or construction grade, square footage. You have the ability to look at to see what we have on file in terms of the square footage of your property. But what you'll have the ability through the informal review process is to give us perspective. You know, for us to kind of go back, we feel we've done our homework, but we also recognize that it's not perfect. It's not a science. There will be reductions that are warranted. Okay, we will do that. That does happen prior to the tentative roll filing May 1st. You do have avenues post May 1st, either through the assessor or grievance day. And as I mentioned, you have small claims. So again, not a way to, you know, the pie's the pie. The levies determine what you pay in tax. It's just a distribution. Everybody's going to go up because you're at a fraction of the value. And typically, and this really holds true in most cases, at least in our experience, in my experience, is that a third goes up, third stays the same, and a third goes down. And that's generally true. You know, sometimes there's slight deviations to that number, but that's pretty much where it is. And
Is that what any towns reassessed? Is that what you mean?
Typically,
Okay,
yeah.
typically,
Yeah.
thank you.
The only times there is deviations to that is if you have a large commercial property that takes up, you know, the majority of your tax base, like a GE.
Right,
It's connected to
Thank you.
situation. Yeah, so that's a general rule of thumb. We don't know, you know, what the one thing on your notice that's important in the hypothetical tax illustration, because we do get this question, is how did we determine the taxes? Ultimately, it's a snapshot in time. So we take previous levies and previous budgets, and we know what the previous tax rates are. And now we have this hypothetical total taxable value, and we take those previous levies and we say, okay, here's what the levies are, here's the new pie, here's a projected tax rate. That's the best that we can do. Again, we're required by law to mail this out and give you a hypothetical tax illustration. But again, the total pie is moving, the tax rate might move because the levies will move, but at least gives you somewhat of an indication as to what you can expect with your tax liability come September and January. Again, utilize the resources. Please don't panic. I know there's a bunch of anxious people. I own property in New York State. I live in New York State. I recognize that property taxes are a significant portion of any family's budget. But what we're trying to do is just to make sure that we get your value right. And so what I would do as a property owner is look at the resources and utilize the resources, whether it's a toll-free number or information that's available online or paper form, just so that this process is as transparent as possible, and that we can engage you as a property owner so that we can get your value right. As mentioned, I know these two gentlemen have a couple things to talk to you about. I'm happy to stick around after. We're gonna have a general, question and answer. So I would just suggest, let us get through our, spiel at the beginning. And then if you have more specific questions, we'll be happy to answer that.
Could we have your number again, please?
What, 1-866-910-1776. And again, I see people writing it down, that's fine. But your next correspondence that's gonna be mailed out at beginning of March, we'll have an insert letter and the number will be on there as well.
Is it 910 or 901?
What did I say? 910?
You did both.
Did I?
Yeah.
Well, now you now have an A in this class.
Yeah, she's paying
That was a
attention.
test. It was 866-910-1776.
We won't call you until the.
177.
6.
6. Does anybody want to question me on that? Don't say 6-7 because I have a 7 and 8-year-old. But yes, yeah. And again, that all the information, there'll be an insert letter that comes with your disclosure notice. That'll have, where to go for information, who to call, and really a step-by-step. What do I do?
This is great already. Thank you.
Thank you.
You wanna go, Jack? All right, just on the introduction about myself. So, Jeremy Baraka, I'm the town of Rochester assessor. My parents have lived in the town since 1990. I bought my first house in the town here in 1999. bought 6 acres in 2004, built a new house on that, sold my first house in 2006. I worked for Liberty Pest Control for 13 years, running my own pest control route. I've been in a lot of houses over those 13 years. 2002, I became a certified real estate appraiser, New York State real estate appraiser. And I've been a real estate appraiser ever since, so 24 years now. I worked for evaluation consultants for 15 straight years, running my own appraisal route. I covered Ulster, Sullivan, Orange, Dutchess counties, doing real estate appraisals. In 2015, I became the assistant assessor with the city of Newburgh. I worked there for 6 years. I performed 2 citywide revaluations with the city of Newburgh, one in 2017, one in 2020, the COVID year.
That's a lot of work.
Everybody was telling us to throw that reval out because it was COVID, and I'm glad I didn't, because values have just been going up and up and up. They would be even further back if we did. So, see, in 2021 September, I became the assessor for the towns of Rochester, Marbletown, and Rosendale. I did that for a little over 3 years, and when I became full-time assessor, then in the town of Rochester here. It was, I believe, in 2024 at some point, we contacted our associates and about performing a townwide reval here, and contracted with them for the 2026 assessment roll coming up here. So GAR Associates have performed, as Davis mentioned, a multi-month data collection campaign, which included using aerial photography, photos taken from a camera that was mounted on top of a car that drove around in all the streets. Property data mailers were mailed to the property owners to confirm property data. That was in October 2025. If the data wasn't correct, everyone had the opportunity to contact GAR, go over and correct the data. If anyone did miss that opportunity, I'm understanding that once the tentative assessment notices come out, you still have the opportunity to call and go over the property data that may not be correct there. Right. So all new assessed values will be based on market values. So everything we're doing is market value. So assessed values will then be 100% market value as opposed to the current 53% that we're at with the equalization rate. So the question that every property owner needs to ask when they receive the tentative assessment notice is, how much can I sell my property for? Will I be able to sell my property for that amount? If not, then there's some type of issue that we probably don't know about, and that's where contacting GAR will hopefully straighten things out. Right, so at that point, you contact GAR, yep. And again, if you don't get satisfaction with GAR during the month of May, you have the ability to talk to me. Or again, you'll be able to file a small claims assessment review or with the Board of Assessment, file a grievance application with the Board of Assessment Review. And again, if you don't get satisfaction there, there's the small claims assessment review process. So there's a few different processes there to get things straightened out.
You explain the 50% thing again?
So currently, because we haven't been performing annual reassessments, the equalization rate has been dropping, which basically shows that our market values are running away from our assessed values. So currently we're at 53% equalization rate, which saying we're at 53% of market
And
value.
you're keeping that.
No, that's what we're getting rid of. We're going to 100% of market value.
Okay, I understand.
Can I just add something real quick with the 53, because this is.
It confuses people, but I.
Well,
understand.
yeah, and I alluded to it about the uniform percent of value. That is what's on the books in real property tax law. Everybody's assessed at, I'm saying 53%. And that's where the equalization rate that's established is 53%. The problem with the 53 is that not everybody's at 53. Because otherwise it'd just be math.
Yes,
We divide.
proportion.
Right, so you have some people that are at 99%, you have some people that are at 12%, because it's not parcel specific. It's a random sample of sales within the town that may not be like your house. Now, there's gonna be some people that are actually, in fact, at 53. That's that bucket of property owners that are not gonna see a change. They're gonna stay pretty much the same. There's some that are way below 53 that are gonna see an increase, and then there's some that are way high, could be at 75% in real value, that are gonna see a reduction in their tax liability. So it does get confusing, But that's a rate that's established every year. It's just not, it's not an accurate number. So now you fast forward, we're gonna put everybody at 100%.
Okay.
Is that statutory?
Is what statutory?
53%.
Yeah, that's at a rate that's established by the Office of Real Property Services every year.
Uniform percentage is statutory.
That's what's on the books. Is that there's a uniform, but that number can change every year. It's been going down as values rise.
Yeah,
Understand.
Assessments aren't changing.
Basically, what that is doing is forcing every single property in the town of Rochester up at the same rate. Which,
But
as Dave
it's
mentioned,
doing
that's
it
not
statewide.
correct. Yeah.
No,
No, it's town by town.
Yeah,
That's what I'm saying, statutory, it's not a state statute.
No,
No,
No.
We're at a
it's town by
uniform
town.
percent is statutory.
yeah, so like Dave
Wait,
mentioned
what's
before.
your last assessment? Do you mind telling me?
I think 2019 was the last assessment there.
Okay, thank you so much. This is wonderful.
Like, again, David mentioned, some properties are appreciating at greater rates than others, some are depreciating while others are appreciating. So that's why that 53% is really not the best way to assess. Doing annual reassessments really is the best way to go. We can look and adjust properties as
Yeah, it's
needed.
easier to do it rather than doing the proportion on the map. Quicker, because, yeah.
Yes,
So if I'm thinking about this correctly, the total amount of tax that the town of Rochester collects won't necessarily go up by much or at all, that that's
So
not the goal, but if
right.
so somebody's property is assessed at double because somebody else's might go, like
It's a pie.
the pie will, everyone's just sort of make it more equitable or
so
something.
the town of Rochester comes up with their budget every year.
Yeah.
School comes up with their budget every year, the county comes up with their budget. So that's, basically is not changing. By doing the reassessment, we're redistributing, we're shifting the tax burden to where it should appropriately be. This is what we're doing. We're essentially, I'm a revenue neutral office. We're not collecting anymore. We're just shifting it around to where it should, appropriately be there.
Excuse me, but how can you tell, I don't understand how you can tell where it should be or what's 100%, market value without going inside of the house?
So again, that's off of the data collection that we did and the property data mailers to property owners. It's every property owner's responsibility to make sure that your property data is correct in the assessor's office.
It's just information like
That's
square
bad.
footage and stuff like
Acreage.
that. But there's a lot of other things that determine what the house is going to sell for.
Right, yeah, we, as assessors, we do mass appraisals. We're not an individual fee appraiser coming in the house and walking around for an hour, inspecting, and taking notes and everything. So we can't do a fine detailed appraisal like that. We're doing mass appraisal
Say that that's what the
Well, you have
actual
to do
market.
something
Well,
with taxes.
based off of sales and the data we have.
You assess market value are could be very different, like you could be assessed at $450, but your house could sell for $700 because it's nicer on the inside and you have a garden.
No, so the market value isn't really what it's.
Not necessarily.
So.
Well, we're trying to, what's the attempt there is,
Should be, yeah.
they should be synonymous with each other, at least close. And you have a good question, and I said this before, we can't force our way into anyone's home. We do have resources through multiple listing service where we can see if it's updated. We will, because this is just the nature of the beast, have to make assumptions. We're gonna have to make assumptions on the living area, and this is not, the way that we do it. It's just the way that it is, because again, I can't force myself into your property. So what we do is through this informal review process, if we did estimate high on your square footage or your upstairs is only rafters and not actual square foot of living area, you have the ability to review that information. But if it's been listed or it has been sold and it's through MLS, we do have access to that information, and we do that through sales verification,
Yes, of course.
right? So we're able to capture, but yeah, for us, that's why we do the informal review.
But if the house was purchased, 20, 25, 30 years ago, that is not gonna be accurate information for what's.
The interior condition, yes, but we will make assumptions that a normal house, short of doing a permit or collecting a permit or what we've collected, we're gonna say that this house is a normal condition house. And we're gonna have a series of sales of normal condition homes that are not all identical.
Right, it's just an
So there might be some that are bigger, there might be more land size, there might be smaller, and there's a series of plus and minuses through appraisal practice to get to a reconciled value. So not every property, not every sale in comparison to yours, they could be inferior or they can be superior. They might have an extra bathroom, right? So what we have on file for you, we would make the series of adjustments until we get it to a range of value.
Yes.
It's ultimately a range of value. There's nobody that can pinpoint an exact value on real estate. It's just not scientific. But what we're looking for is a range of value, and you fall into that range of value of comparable like properties to what you have, what your subject property is.
That makes sense.
So there'll be highs and lows, but it'd be a pretty tight range. And that's the basis for what your value is with a series of adjustments.
Yeah, so
Sorry.
short of doing interior inspections, we have to go by the exterior that we see. We go by, like I said, looking at MLS listings, we look at building permits, anything that's been done to the property to come up with what we determined the condition to be.
So if someone filled out the sheet and there were small things that were inaccurate, that were minuses, let's say, an extra this or that, will that automatically readjust?
That's been reviewed. And so before we would get, clean inventory on every
The
property.
homeowner filled that out, it was not huge things, but if there were small things, they should maybe talk to someone.
Well, you'll have access to that information through through a dedicated website. Where you can look to make sure that any discrepancies that you may have had made it back to the
Oh,
file.
that's good,
And then in the event that it didn't, because there's just a lot of
of
information,
course.
you have the ability through the informal review, not only to challenge your value, but to say, okay, look, I have these data changes. This is, it could be something nominal, like my shed was built in 1986, not 1990, something like that. We still want to get, is it going to move the value? No. But when someone comes and says, look, you have for me for 2.5 baths, I only have 2 baths. Those are more impactful.
Yes, of course.
Think of you as a seller or a buyer. That would be something that could move the needle.
So, I think so.
Okay, somehow I could tell, I got that sense. But that's part of it too, is from an inventory standpoint, yes, look at your value, but also look for the inventory that we have on file. And if there is a discrepancy, you have an avenue to bring that to our attention.
And I just want to add here that my job as the assessor is to treat all owners fairly and to make sure assessments are up to date. So when assessments are not kept up to date, some property owners will end up paying more than their fair share of taxes, while others are paying less than their fair share. And for residential properties, vacant land, single family, 2-family, 3-family homes, market value is determined by the sales comparison approach to value. So based off of comparable sales. Market value for 4 or more units and commercial type properties are determined by an income approach to value. I just want to put that out there, let everybody know how we're coming up with the values. Again, I've mentioned there that we're doing what's called a CAMA, computer assisted mass appraisal. As assessors, we're valuing thousands of properties. Can we get it fine tuned like a fee appraiser that's in the house for an hour collecting data? Probably not, so that's why we have this informal review process to correct any inconsistencies or incorrect data or.
Right, if it's over 4-family, it goes by income.
Right. Income and
Well,
expense.
yeah, let me just mention that. The income is a component and is not the sole component, sales approach as well. So you would utilize both, yeah. Sometimes it's an owner occupied, if it's not an apartment and they're not rented. That's sort of a different scenario, but we would use both approaches, the sales and income. So if you are a commercial property owner, that's something through the informals, if you have rent rolls or audited financials, income and expenses, where and not as a residential property owner, that's relevant to the valuation of your property, if it's income producing. That's something that we would you would make us aware of. If you're not an income commercial, above 4 units and above, or you're not a commercial property per se, then, you would stick to the sales approach, look at comparable sales that are similar. to your property.
Again, the only thing I wanted to add was, as Dave mentioned earlier, as assessor, I have no control over taxes. We do the assessed values. So if it's a problem with the assessed value, I'm the one to say. If the assessed value is correct, but you don't like your taxes, I'm not the one to say.
Yeah, please, do not, give us a blank. Informal review and tell us that your taxes are too high. Cause there's really nothing, and it happens all the time. I can appreciate the tax liability, really I can, but we're focused on the value. And ultimately, that's our role and responsibility in this project, and this is every year, your assessor established that, and the goal again is fair and equitable.
There's other towns that are a lot higher in Ulster County than Rochester.
A lot higher.
A lot higher, Marbletown, Kingston, New Paltz, like a whole percent on the assessment higher.
Yeah, that's why I'm trying to get on the 4-year schedule where we do these annual reassessments. That way it keeps everything more fair and accurate for everybody. Excuse me?
Did you say every 4 years or just
Yeah,
the
well-
annual?
Well, it's what's called an annual reassessment thing, but it would be like a 4-year plan with the state we have to get on. Where we do a big reval like this is 1 year, then I can look at values next year, I can do possible some trending on certain neighborhoods with property types that's warranted,
Is
whether
this
it's
the
up or
first time
down.
the town's used for, if I may ask?
I believe so, yes.
Great.
And then in year 3, we would do another big annual reassessment again to, bring everybody up to 100%, keep everybody at 100%. And again, that's the best way to do it. Some will go up, some will go down, some will stay the same, instead of forcing everybody up like what's been going on over the past 5-6 years. Right, any other questions from anybody? Yes.
Well, what if you're in the floodplain? Situation with that.
So hopefully we know about it, but if not, make us aware of it and we will definitely take that into consideration.
I have a question. Just logistically, like. You're lending your data to Jeremy to help him do this reassessment? Is that what you're bringing to this?
I'm gonna
Your
repeat
data.
your question, I'm lending,
Your data?
no, it's the town's data. We're just verifying the information, we're working, it's a collaborative
Like
process.
But you have other like such as the aerial views and stuff, and I'm sure you have a lot of, you've been doing this a long time, a lot of more
Very
experience.
common
coming into
towns
the-
hired companies like this. Yeah.
I think one important point to underscore is that his office doesn't close. So in other words, it
Oh,
doesn't
I
close for the
understand
project,
that. I
there's
just
like the.
wondered how you what you do that he's not able to do and vice versa.
Well, what I'll say is, and this is true of, it's not isolated, to just this town, Rochester, is that. We're tasked to do something that should take, I don't know, 3, 4, if he were to do it by himself. With his limited staff, so what we're doing is assisting so that it's in a condensed period of
Understood.
time, we have the
Understood.
resources and, lack of a better term, bench strength. To sort of get it done in these really sort of ambitious timeframe, but we're used to it, because we do it.
And I'm
we have the-
assuming when you're in helping him, you're giving him some data, right?
Well,
The data that they collect will all be given to
Updating
the office. Yep.
and that's a great point, is that, street level photography, aerial imagery, digital sketches. All of that is a deliverable to the town, to his office, which, it's not even in theory, allows it become more efficient, but also maintain it. So in other words, we're building basically the inventory and lack of better terms, building the tool shed. So he has the tools to now, the product to now be able to maintain it and continue accurate assessments. It's one thing to get us up to everybody being at 100. It's then
I
maintaining.
understand, but you're not gonna put yourself out of business either, so. You're still collecting data well beyond
Yeah,
this year.
I don't,
Not for the
No.
town here,
yeah, I don't,
yeah, no.
the contract with other
The
towns.
benefit is that they did the imaging was all done in one set of time, so that they had vehicles driving around. Taking images of home, it was all done in the same period, so it's this clean slate where everything's collected at the same time. And the office couldn't have done that, but Jeremy's still looking line by line at every single property. So it's like both this massive amount of information, but then it's also reviewed by Jeremy and Joey.
Then they may have to do that again in 5 or 6 years.
Yeah.
Same old thing. But
this question, I just want to get to, there's a question in the back. Yes, sir.
So GAR has prepared and collected all that data, the imagery and street views and everything else. And given it to the town and to assist in the assessment role preparation. Does GAR retain that information and do anything else with that data?
No,
It's not sold to any parties and it's not used for any other
no, sir.
statistical analysis.
No, so it's expressly written in the contract that we are not to profit from.
Not to profit and retaining a copy of two different things. Do you retain a copy of the data?
To the extent that we would have a database that, we have to collect the information. So we do retain it in the sense that, but we're not selling it, we need to have it in, because we're ultimately gonna develop a public facing site.
But
So
that also goes to the state for analysis.
And the state will be.
So the use is for a website for the town.
We'll have a public facing, forward facing site.
That's for the residents.
Yeah.
And we also have to generate,
Almost 4,900.
4,900. We have to generate there's certain things that we've done contractually. That where we would have that database, because we got to generate a notice to mail to you folks.
Is that database maintained for any other reason other than the ones that you just mentioned?
Yeah,
Is there any internal use by that?
no, and what I will say too is remember. This information's public.
Right.
So in other words, you could foil it. GAR could go in and foil databases and some vendors do that. It's public information. There's nothing that's confidential. On a,
Street views.
well, that's a deliverable, but I could go and take a picture from the right of way. So there's no, from a confidentiality standpoint, it's public information. You could go and foil an RPS database from any municipality across New York State. So, there's no impropriety.
I'm
in
not
that.
suggesting it is.
Yeah, no, I'm just saying, I just wanted to underscore that it's public data. It's available to anybody.
If there's a senior who's maybe had their home many, many years and is not updated and they're happy with it like that, is that a case for? Like if it makes it below the market value because of those things, is that a case or is it more like? Because they're not painting the exterior and it's not downspout, how's that work in terms of?
That could very well be a case.
Okay,
Well, something like that, I usually say, can they call, they come out, take a look,
Okay.
and I would be happy to make adjustment if it's warranted.
okay, thank you.
And actually, I was gonna say that, especially any elderly neighbors that that can't go through this process, if you can assist them with
Yeah.
it, especially if their house is not in the best condition and we don't know that.
Yes,
Assist any elderly neighbors that you have friends that you might have and, let us know what the condition of their house is there.
that's wonderful, thank you.
Yes.
When you sent me the notice, Carl Associates. I just thought it was a scam and they threw it in the place we investigated. So get that information correctly?
Yeah, what I would suggest is wait till you get your disclosure notice. With the,
March first?
yes,
Uh,
yeah, well, it's
That week.
second falls on a Monday, but that week. You'll get a notice and there'll be that toll-free number. We can certainly, and if you're an internet user. That information will be available online, so you'll see what do we have on file for your property.
Thank you.
Yep.
Anybody else? Yes.
So 100% real estate value, you'll determine what people's property is market value. The taxation rate or the equalization rate, will that still exist?
So it'll be 100% instead of 53%. So
So-
market value will be the same as assessed value. 100%.
And then the tax will be, you will be taxed on 100% of your value.
You'll be taxed on your market value, which will be the same as your assessed value.
It's the same thing as the 53, it's just.
But just
I'll do the math.
also want to put this out there, so not being at 100%, being at 53%. For example, school district comes up with their tax rate when they set their budgets for each of the towns. And then they say, oh, wait a minute. Town of Rochester is not at 100%. We need to equalize our tax rate to make them at 100%. So that school tax rate right now is much higher than it most likely will be next year when we're at 100%.
So it isn't right to say that we can all expect a 47% tax increase.
No.
Okay, good.
No, it's not.
Now I tell people really it's smoke and mirrors for the tax rates of not being at 100% or 100%. You're being taxed as if you're at 100% right now.
Right.
The school tax rate. So it's no difference really.
Right.
So in the next year, it might be, there will be a lower equalization potentially, right? As you,
So you're talking next year.
the next year's,
If I don't,
before you assess again, that equalization.
so again, like I said, when we're signing up, hopefully getting on the 4-year cycle with the state. Where we'll do the big townwide revale, year 1 here, year 2 and 3. I can do what's called trending for certain neighborhoods. So if say neighborhood 1 warrants a 10% adjustment up, so I could do that. Neighborhood 3 might warrant a 5% adjustment down. I could do that in year 2 and 3. And that keeps everybody basically at 100% by doing those adjustments. Year 3 or year 4 then would be the 4th year in the cycle, would be another entire reappraisal for every parcel in the town. At that point, though, should be able to maintain it in-house myself, being that Gar did the big bulk of the data collection and workforce this year.
Everything's predicated on the market.
Right.
So in other words, if right now we're with COVID, it's tempered a little bit, but there was a huge appreciation post-COVID, which will force that equalization rate down. Now, if there's a leveling off, then, there might be a smaller uptick. That rate won't drop to the levels that we've seen, because as the market rises, and if you don't adjust assessments, or you don't make adjustments that are relevant to what's happening in the market, then ultimately that rate is gonna get pushed down.
Yeah, I know some assessors that don't do the trending in years 2 and 3, they just let it go, so the steep rate will drop in those years 2 and 3, and then they do their big revale again in year 4. Right back to 100%.
Just another question, which is, when you do the aerial view, are you looking for? You fly over somebody's property, and then you're looking at the data that you have already, and you say they have a house and a garage, but I don't see that barn. On there, that's what you're looking for, somebody put up a barn on their property, and maybe to get a permit for it or whatever,
Correct.
that's what you're looking for.
And also the other way too, it's like, we have a barn on this data, but I don't see a barn, got torn down years ago, so. Time to take that off, when it should have been removed years ago.
I missed a little bit at the beginning, say this lady, but. This way of dividing it up by neighborhoods, is that like a map that's available for us to see? How you're dividing it up, what these neighborhoods?
I just have a neighborhood map on the wall in the office, yeah, pinned up on the wall in my office there, depends on that.
related, I was gonna ask, how many neighborhoods did you end up with and what was the determining factor?
I think we ended up, have now, I think 7 neighborhoods total. Yeah, I think it was, we didn't make any more neighborhoods, we worked with what we had there. I think we adjusted some of the streets, moved them from that neighborhood to this neighborhood. Where, you know, again, market change where, you know, the street was not hot years ago, but
Yeah.
now it's hot. So this needs to be moved over to this market area or whatever there.
So that was pre-existing from 2019 or whenever the last one?
Yeah, exactly. So just some properties were shifted from one neighborhood to another, but the amount of neighborhoods didn't change.
And I think the refinement on the neighborhood delineation is also based on sales. So we see things, you know, through the sales verification, they work in tandem. It helps us refine the neighborhoods.
Are you referring to the neighborhood as what the town of Rochester is made of, 12 or 13 hamlets such as Lebo Hart, Tabasco? That
No,
neighborhood?
no.
Okay, thank you again for my question.
So can I just, you were saying that when it comes to taxing districts that we're like. So town taxes were the full taxing district, but for school and county, our total levy for the town is based on our total equalized rate. Is it split up? So like what you were saying is if that number right now, I can't remember what it is, our total property value at the equalization rate. That's what our school and county taxes are based off of.
Or total assessed value?
Yeah,
Yes, yeah.
yeah, so,
Look at the total assessed value for the town, yeah.
and then it's equalized at a flat 53, it's like equalized at that rate for school and county taxes.
Right, that's correct there.
Yeah.
Right.
So that's what you were saying, because you said something about that, that rate for school and county taxes, it's possible that could go down a little bit, and we might see
Yeah.
possibly a decrease because our assessments are more accurate.
Yeah, so,
Right.
so let's say, okay, I'm just gonna try to use simple numbers. The levy's 1.5 million. And you're at an equalized value of 50 million as a total pie. Right, and the tax rate's, you know, $25 or give or take. But now the total pie's gone to 70 million. But that stays at 1.5 million, that tax rate will drop.
Right.
Now, unless there's pronounced increases in the budgets, which there's, you know, 2% cap and there's certain mechanisms. Then there'll be a drop in the tax rate. In other words, that budget, if it stays somewhat stagnant, maybe slight increase, the pie's gotten bigger. So the 50 million for the total value has now gone up to 70 million. That tax rate is gonna drop because they don't need to raise the, you know, the levy is always the deciding factor in the budget. This is the deciding factor on the tax rate.
Right, but in terms of the shared, I guess I was thinking about the school, because what you were saying basically is when it comes to school and county taxes, we're paying quote unquote market value. It's just not because that's how we pay our fair share, but it's not as accurate.
That's the last part of that is accurate. What the school district and every school district formula is different. How they allocate and appropriate what a specific, because there could be a school district that's in 2 municipalities. That have 2 different
We share
acres.
with 3.
We share with 3.
Three,
Yeah.
right? Yeah, so in your case, there's 3. They could be at very different rates. And their percentages of the properties or the value that's within that school district in that municipality can vary. But ultimately, they would apply that equalization rate to get to a full market value and then determine
Right.
what's their chunk of that levy. Now, what happens is, and this doesn't always happen, but you may go up to 100%. So your portion of the school, and the school is always, 75%, if not more, give or take. That's gonna be the majority of the chunk of the taxes that you pay. But that school district, if you go to 100, that there may be some relief with a shared school district. But that's up to the school district to decide what the formula. ultimately, the levy, the total levy.
Right.
Is gonna determine what the rates are depending on the.
This is a great sheet. This really helps. So confusing, this sheet in the back of it.
Yeah.
It's really good.
What is the breakdown between school, county, town? Percent ballpark?
Percent of the taxes? or-
Yeah, overall taxes.
That I don't know. That, because I don't do taxes.
Yeah, I mean, I would say that for most, the school is gonna be obviously the biggest chunk. But it varies, but that's always gonna be the bulk of
Yeah, it's
it.
usually like 2/3.
The town's always the smallest, and county's next, and then the school.
Fire department probably lower than the town.
Yes,
Those are all broken down. You can look that up.
but it's considered a town tax, so
What's that?
it is considered a town tax.
It's all broken down, library, it's all broken down.
And what you'll see in that disclosure notice is that there'll be the school, county, and town, like you'll see the three lines.
Yeah.
You know, the other thing that's really important about this is that when you're at an equalized value, you don't get the full allowed exemption amount. So when I was saying that the pie's getting bigger and the tax rate, we don't have a crystal ball, we don't know what that tax rate is. But your exemption amounts will go up to the full 100%. So there's a relationship, because right now you're only getting a fraction of that exemption amount, whatever it is. Could be your star, there's a cap on your star,
Right,
but
so-
you've seen your
Almost exempt.
the vets exemption for those that have a vet, I appreciate your service, but those go up to the full amount. So while your value's going up, if you have that exemption will go up too, in proportion with whatever your value is. So you'll see a relief in that sense.
One thing I know, we've been getting, calls every year from especially a lot of seniors, and how come my exemption went down? How it went down? Heat rates dropping, heat rates dropping. A lot of
That's a
seniors
good point.
exemptions have been going down, losing their exemptions.
Deadline's March 1st for that, if anyone needs to put it.
And there's inherent benefits, we talk about the fairness, fair and equitable assessments is, that you're paying your fair share based on it. But there's inherent benefits to the town through bond ratings and things like that. I believe you applied for aid. So there'll be state aid. That after this project, we do everything that this fine gentleman says that we should do. Well, the town will for reimbursement aid, we'll apply for reimbursement aid. That goes back to the general sort of, general fund, doesn't go to the assessment office, but it'll go. So there's benefits there besides, maintaining your values at 100%.
There was a nice study done by the Lincoln Institute about the municipalities that maintain at 100%. The benefits of maintaining 100%, higher values, lower tax rates. It said better Moody's ratings, better bond ratings, better shares of different taxes coming from the state or the county.
Great.
Yeah.
Mr. Assessor, I have a question. If you enter into the cyclical reassessment after the reval, does the state give aid every year for that anymore? They used to.
Just the
Back
big
in the day,
just
they
the
used
big
to.
reappraisal years, right? Yeah. It's the big reappraisal.
Oh, yeah.
It is on the books. It's still legally there, but they do not fund it.
Yeah.
And the other thing too is even in a reassessment year. What is on the books is up to $5 a parcel.
Right.
The problem is it's a pool of money. That's split through all of the reassessment communities. So in other words, if there's a larger community, they may get the lion's share of that pool of money.
Yeah.
So while it's up to $5, real dollars are, $2 and change.
I mean, back in the mid 2005, 2006, we used to get, aid every year. We kept, stayed in the cyclical reassessment program for probably 10, 12 years. And we used to get it for Star administration too, but that's
Yeah.
all gone by the wayside.
Well, and so when we would do a project, when there was interim aid, that was $5. So the state really incentivized it, and that was, with the Pataki administration.
Right.
I know you were an assessor when you were about 12 years old.
I
but-
was.
But that has, you know, they still have it, they just don't fund it. And there's been some, you know, discussion about cyclical. Unfortunately, it hasn't got across because most jurisdictions outside of New York do it on a cyclical basis.
Right, so
Everybody does it, it's mandated, you know, Massachusetts, North Carolina. They do it every 4 years, and that county, there's a cycle, there's a schedule. You know, we've been fortunate where we've worked with communities 30, 40 years that maintain 100%.
Yeah.
So year over year,
They're
it
doing-
doesn't mean that assessments change. I mean, that's important to understand, it doesn't mean that's.
yeah.
But you do it on a regular basis
Mhm.
because you're doing something that's somewhat unpopular. Because, you know, as soon as you start mentioning reassessment, but you're going through this labor intensive work, you might as well maintain it. So that you do have 100% and you don't wait, you know, 7, 8 years, 10 years. And then all of a sudden you're right back at square one.
Isn't there any effort for the state to pass some kind of mandate?
Every session, there's something that goes to the floor. And it ultimately,
Because it sounds like it would
before
be
it
very
gets to the-
beneficial
Yes.
if we had a schedule. I mean, for the taxpayer as well as the town.
yeah. The scenario, one of the scenarios, but one of the things is these shared school districts. So now you're gonna have a school district that's spread with 3 municipalities that could have very different equalization rates. And that can cause inequities within the tax liability. You might be fine in your municipality, but now you're shared with a school district where there's a lot of moving parts with those school tax formulas. You know, that's not our concern, as Jeremy said probably 4 or 5 times. You know, our goal is to make sure that we get your value right.
But the argument definitely favors cyclical reassessment.
Yeah.
It's too bad.
I'm happy to stick around too, if people have individual questions, yes.
But, does the people's homes around you affect the value of your home?
Possibly to some degree, then maybe, that's an answer to a lot of questions in the assessment office. Possibly, maybe. I know,
Yeah.
as an appraiser, and there was an ASCAR hearing last year, and a treatment company from Long Island. They were insisting on using the house next door to the one I was doing, except it was nowhere near comparable. So in that case, so I would never use the house next door for that one. There were 2 separate houses. There.
Nice, but a high sale can trigger reassessment.
A high sale as in,
Like if a property is assessed at a certain thing and then sells for quite higher than, then does that sale trigger, can that sale trigger a reeval?
on that property itself there, possibly if the property data is not correct that we have.
Right.
If I determine that there's other stuff to it that, will have, then I can correct the property data
Right.
and adjust that assessment. Anybody else?
Which is great. Oh, thank you.
Thank you. Yeah.